me, Denise, why did you choose this topic? How to have true love after toxic relationships. Let's just start there.
Perfect, Michelle. Well, I would say because that's first what I created for myself. So being in a 22-year toxic relationship. And so when I say toxic, I mean, not only was my ex emotionally unavailable, but he has a personality disorder that led to a lot of traumas and dramas during the 22 years. And the red flags were there from the beginning. And, as life went on, as the time went on, it got worse and worse. The episodes, everything in life got worse and worse. And so after finally having the courage to leave that relationship in 2011 and coming here to North Carolina, I dove really deep into me and healing me from everything that I had been through, which led me to finally being in a healthy relationship. So that's where from toxic love to true love comes from, because that was what I had experienced. 22 years of being in a toxic relationship with a toxic persons, because as everybody knows, when you marry somebody, you marry the family as well, to now having a healthy relationship for the first time in my life, which I had never experienced before. So it's so beautiful and amazing. And I just want to share that with women, that no matter what they've been through, it is possible for them to, yes, find the right man that is emotionally available and treats them like the queen that they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing just a little bit of your story, Denise. And if it's okay, I'd like to ask you a personal question. And I ask this from a place of compassion and love, because I am someone who spent way too long in certain relationships back when I was single. But I have to ask this question because I think it's going to be on the mind of some of our listeners. So why did you stay in this toxic relationship for 22 years, right? And I'm asking this, like I say, from a place of compassion. But I think it's an important question because I don't think these things are always really simplistic.
Great question, Michelle. And there's so many layers to that answer that I could give to you. But in short, what I'll say is that very codependent relationship. So I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was very dependent on him to provide for, our family. We lived in a beautiful suburban neighborhood with a gorgeous pool home. That's one of the factors, very codependent. The other one is my worthiness of not being able to, or thinking I was not able to make it on my own, or that I deserved better in life than this situation. And then there was a lot of trauma bonding involved in this relationship. So there's various layers to why I stayed. I was scared, very scared to leave. There was threats of, I'll take the kids away from you if you leave. And he did one at a point in time, he did do that. And I was so, looking back at that time, I was so weak that I just really crumbled. I remember laying in my daughter's bedroom and in her bed, curled up in a fetal position and just crying the whole day because he did take them. So I was in the house, everything was still intact, but he had taken the kids. He had, gone through with his threat. Although that didn't last very long, but in the moment, it feels like forever when, somebody takes your children away. So in short, I would say it's those layers, those topics, and then there's underneath layers to all of those answers that I just gave to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think these situations are not always, on the outside looking in, it seems so clear and what, the next steps that should be taken, and it seems so obvious. And yet when you're in the middle of something like this, and like I say, I come from a place of compassion, things can be a lot more complex and complicated, and it can be really challenging and really difficult sometimes to unravel yourself, especially when you've got a lot invested in a situation as you did, and especially in your situation where there are like children involved. Sometimes they're used as pawns in those kind of situations as well. So it can be really complicated. So how did you finally get the courage, the strength to break free from that after 22 years?
That, Michelle, did take a lot of courage, and I would be lying if I said it was just, a whim and I just did it. It took a lot of years of me going over in my head that this has got to happen, this has got to happen, this has got to happen, until really, and there's always like the cherry on top. There's always something that catapults you over the edge to be like, okay, that's it. Although I've been thinking about it for years and years and years, this situation or this incident that happened is where I'm going to take action. And so that's what happened for me. So it was years of being unhappy and crying myself to sleep nearly every night, thinking divorce, 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 divorce. And then finally it was 2011 after, first 2008, there was a traumatic event that we went through where I told him I wanted a divorce. And because of a slew of things that the cocktail of ingesting pills that he was taking brought on a lot of, things like depression and just craziness, really. So that led to him trying to take his life in 2008 with our 14-year-old daughter in the next room. So when that happened, like I said, I told him I wanted a divorce because I had had enough. And then when that happened, it was like, oh, I can't do that now because I would be like the crappiest person in the world, and my kids. So I didn't do it then. It was 2.5 years after that incident. So now we're into 2011, where another incident happened, not as traumatic, but it was just to where I was like, I can't do this anymore. There's just too much energy being drained. There's just too much traumas and dramas going on that I decided that's it. And so I made a 5-month plan for myself. I figured 5 months was when my daughter was graduating from high school. It gave me plenty of time to find a place here in North Carolina. It gave me time to save money because I was running his business. So I didn't have a career. Like I said, I was a stay-at-home mom, but I ran his business. So every little bit of funds that came to me was funneled through him. So I would write out checks through the business account to my name, and then those were supposed to go to paying the bill. So I had to get really creative in this time. Lots of fun things that I did that I'm like, wow, magical. But it took a lot of, so in the 5 months of planning and really strategically thinking how this is going to happen. So I told the universe it's this date, and I booked the moving truck, and everything just beautifully fell into place at that time. But it was after the 22 years of all of that I finally was like, that's it. I've had enough and I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of like had a deadline in your mind. You set a date and you planned and worked towards that so that you would be ready to do that once that time came.
Absolutely.
But this was after things building for a very, very long time.
Very long time, yes.
Okay, so then once you had the opportunity and the courage to leave the relationship as you did, then tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you began to get yourself stronger and back on the path to healing and ultimately ready for now what is a joyful, happy, healthy relationship. I know there's a lot there, but take us on the journey.
Okay, so before I went on the journey of solely focusing on me, first, we all go through the initial breakup, and then there's the, oh my gosh, scarcity thoughts came rolling back in. Denise, what are you doing? You've never been on your own before. And then the phone calls came in. I love you. We have, X amount of years together. We have a family together. Don't let that get, let's not waste that. So I went back after I had done all of that. So we moved to North Carolina, my daughter and I, we got ourselves a 2-bedroom apartment. I was feeling really good, feeling very free from the abuse, free from all of the control manipulation, and in a whole nother state. So one of the biggest feelings of freedom, Michelle, for me was that I didn't have to look over my shoulder like I'm going to run into him or his family members at the grocery store or anything. I was privileged to have that. I feel very blessed. But so the phone calls came rolling in, and the scarcity thoughts all kind of together. And so I buckled and went back to Florida and stayed, we're going to work things out. And that lasted about 5 minutes. And so we stayed there for 8 months, and then I had to do it all over again. So yeah, I had to do it all over again in 2012. And that's when I came here and stayed here. That was like the final time. So let me just share with your audience the blessing.
Something right there before you go on to the rest of the story here, Denise. I just want to say, for women that have been in a difficult, painful, abusive, or toxic kind of relationship like this, I don't think it's uncommon to have that experience where the man will be in contact with you and say, everything will be different this time, and let's get back together, and let's give it another try. And what I say to women is, in almost every case, sure, there are those rare exceptions where someone really makes a dramatic change in their life. Maybe they're finally able to let go of an addiction of drugs or alcohol or something like that. But in almost every case, you ultimately land right back where you started from, because the same dynamics are going to be there in that relationship. It seems to me, and I say this quite often, that once two people kind of learn the dance steps that they do together, it's really hard to do a new dance. And so I just wanted to interject that in there in case there's anyone that's in that situation of having just broken away, or they're thinking about going back to something that was really toxic. I don't think this is uncommon, what you've experienced, to want to try to give it another chance, but it very seldom works.
That's such a great point, Michelle, and you're absolutely correct on that. I would say maybe a handful to where the couple does work through it and come out of it happily ever after. I think the majority of it is the results that you just said, and what happened with me too. So after that, I came back here, and I just really picked up where I left off when I came back here. And so I got the same job that I had before, which was great because I left on good terms, and started to feel the feeling of free, which for me, I went through 2 years of being my rebellious self. So I was really, ultimately, I was numbing myself from all of the pain that I had endured and had not dealt with. And I think this is huge for your audience too, Michelle, because I just posted this on social media. There's such a way that we're being, and I thought this too. Okay, great. Done with that relationship, done with him. Let's move on. I'm so happy that I'm out of that, and I feel so good. Let's just move on. Not stopping and thinking, wait a minute, Denise or Michelle or whoever you are, I need to heal all of the wounds that I occurred in that relationship. So I was one of those, was like, all right, I can travel when I want. I can do whatever I want. So for 2 years straight, I was numbing myself with alcohol and men. So that meant every weekend I was partying, doing whatever I want, whenever I wanted, and traveling, which was the good part, California, Colorado, which I loved. But although I was living a different life, I was still not dealing with the past. So when I was dating, I was attracting the same version of my ex. just in a different body. So on paper, they looked really good. So they had good jobs, they were educated, owned homes, and on paper they looked good, but they were very emotionally unavailable. I never stayed with anybody long enough to know if they were truly toxic, as the experience that I had before. But it came to a point where I thought to myself, okay, these people don't know each other, but I do. I know them. So I realized, like, I'm the common denominator here, and I need to take a step back from dating and really focus on me and heal my inner whatever it was, because I didn't know at the time, and work through that so that, and of course at that time, Michelle, I wasn't thinking about a future relationship. I was really just trying to figure out how I can stop attracting these emotionally unavailable men. Because after the 2 years of me partying, I started to say to myself, that's not you. You don't act like this, Denise. You don't do this. This is not you. What kind of an example are you being? You know, the bar scene gets old eventually. You know, being single, eating out alone, traveling alone, all of that gets old eventually, to where you come to a place where you're like, I want to share this with somebody. I want to be with somebody that I have fun with and I laugh with and I get along with, somebody I truly enjoy being with. And that's the point where I came at that time, where I said, I need to figure this out so that I clear away all of that and finally have freedom inside of myself and be able to have a best friend. So that was the journey with that. And that was super fun, because it's something that I love to share with women, because a lot of us are very ashamed of being, you know, numbing ourselves with, you know, alcohol and men. They don't want to admit it. That's a part of their life that they're very ashamed of. But I feel like the more vulnerable that we are with our audience, the more it's connective to them and they can relate, because I'm not the only one who's done this. I'm sure.
Well, no, absolutely not. You're not. I think it's very common after we come out of a relationship and we're in pain to rebound into something, some way. Now, for me, I at one point broke up with a man, or we broke up. He broke up with me, to be more precise. And it was incredibly painful for me. And it wasn't a toxic relationship. It was actually a good relationship. But I rebounded into a toxic relationship because I wanted to do that move on thing. And I wanted to move on fast, and I wanted to get through the pain fast. And so I rebounded into the most toxic relationship of my life, rather than giving myself that chance to heal. So I think the point I'm making here is whether you're coming out of a toxic relationship like you were, or whether you're even coming out of a good relationship like I was, if it's a really painful breakup, you need to take some time for yourself to heal, to kind of get your sea legs under you, if you will, before you really dive into getting into another relationship right away. Because those rebounders, you know, we rebound in different ways. You were rebounding into alcohol men. I rebounded into a really toxic relationship because I just wanted to say, okay, fine, I've moved on. You broke up with me. I'm through this pain. I'm into something else. Well, I was into something else that was terribly destructive and very painful. And so then on top of having to get over the original breakup, then I had to heal also from this now secondary relationship, toxic relationship.
I think that's such a great point that you just made, Michelle, because when we don't, so there's two things to that. One, when we don't heal, when we don't complete the past, we don't heal the past. And when we come through this and just ignore our own inner self, right, then we fall into another pattern. And I see a lot of women who have been through relationship after relationship, whether that relationship was a marriage or not. They've been through all of these relationships with the same type of guy. They keep repeating the pattern and they don't get it. They don't understand why they keep doing this. 4 marriages, I have somebody who she's been through 4 marriages and she married another narcissist, and she's like, what is going on? And so it's that pattern and the cycle that we need to really pay attention to, because it's life showing us what we need to give ourselves attention to. So it's the part of us inside of us that is screaming for attention. So maybe that was, the Denise at 8 years old or 10 years old, I don't know, but it's a part of me that needed the validation and attention to break that cycle and then move on into a healthy relationship. And isn't that the secret to having the healthy relationships, is to build a healthy relationship with yourself first, and then that will show in your outside world.
Oh yeah, that certainly is a foundational piece. And it is not the easiest thing to come to the realization that you, me, we're the common denominator in what keeps happening. If we keep attracting kind of the same kind of men, or the same pattern keeps repeating in our love lives. And yet that can be a gateway to having a breakthrough. So there's good news about that. The bad news is it's sometimes kind of hard to come to that realization. I can remember my husband telling me about a man that he used to work with who had been through like 5 or 6 marriages. And for the first, my husband worked at this place for 18 years, so he knew this man well and saw him go through several of these marriages. And he was always very much very negative about the women, and it was their fault, and what terrible people they were, and how could they have fooled him so much at the beginning, and on and on and on. Well, finally, on about the 6th marriage, he finally said, I finally have kind of had to realize that this might have something to do with me. You think? But it's not always easy to get there, right? Because it's always easier to look outside ourselves than to do the deep inner work and healing that sometimes is required. If the problem is always out there, then we always can project and blame, and we don't have to take any personal responsibility to do our own work and healing, which sometimes is a very lengthy and very vulnerable process, like you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly it. So it is the projection. It is, I always say that it was so easy for me to point the finger at my ex and say, you are this, you are that, you're a liar, you're a cheater, you're whatever it was that I was pointing the finger at him and saying, and never once looking at me and going, wait a minute, you are a co-creator in this relationship, Denise. You invested 22 years and you attracted him and have 2 children with him. So you're in this too. So, it's about taking responsibility for your entire life, right? It's about taking responsibility for the part that you play in this relationship and every relationship that we have. And of course, this wasn't until I was way out of it and I was on my healing journey that I had all of these realizations that I was the co-creator and I had to take responsibility. Because you're right, it's so easy to just point the finger and blame and say, because I didn't cheat, right? I didn't take drugs. That wasn't me. It was you. So it was very easy to put the blame, shift it all on him and not take any responsibility for myself. Yeah, that's a great point for the audience to hear, because that when we blame, we're in victim mentality. And when we're in victim mentality, that's child energy. And when we're in child energy, it's like it's on the lower emotion, and it's more climbing that we have to get to the higher emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the good news about taking personal responsibility and giving yourself the support, the time, the opportunity to heal is that you do have a chance to do something to shift those patterns that you may have experienced that are causing you pain, that are causing you to get into those relationships that are toxic or painful, or that leave you kind of lying there in the dust, smoke, and ashes wondering what in the world happened, right?
Yeah.
And it's so worth doing that work. It's so worth doing that work of healing, because it can open up, like it has for you, Denise, a whole new possibility of having a loving, happy, committed relationship. And you said at the very beginning of our conversation here today, this is the first time you've had that.
Yeah.
But you're not at the end of your life. You get to have that.
Exactly. It's amazing. And, In my family, I haven't really experienced a healthy relationship because 9 times out of 10, when we've attracted these toxic relationships, we come from this emotional abuse or neglect in our family. And really the only healthy relationship that I've ever had is with my best friend for almost 40 years now. But besides that, I had never experienced a romantic healthy relationship. So this is all new to me, and I'm really just indulging in it. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And I love to share that with other women and men, no matter what you've been through, you can climb out of it. You can create an amazing, not only love life for yourself, but life in general, an amazing life. Because the life that I lead now, Michelle, truly was just a dream for me. It was like a dream that was way far away. Like, that's not even possible to have the freedom that I have, to travel, to have my best friend, that we share everything. We disagree, but there's no arguing, there's no fighting, there's no threats, there's none of that. And it's like, I can be free to be me in this relationship. And I never had that before.
Yeah, that was really beautifully said. And I really love that you're bringing that message of hope to this audience. I think this is a particularly relevant topic for so many of you out there. And I'm really, really grateful that we were able to discuss this. And thanks for being so vulnerable and sharing your story too, Denise. I really appreciate it because I really feel like a lot of people are going to really connect with what you've shared and with your journey. And I think you can help a lot of people through sharing your story. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm honored to be here and share this message and with your audience and share the message of love. Thank you.
All right, everyone. So we will see you soon. I'm so glad you've joined us here today, and we really appreciate your presence and your time and your commitment to having the love that you desire in your life. So we'll see you soon, and bye-bye for now.